The unexpected allies. Admiral Vexterra stood at the observation deck of the Coalition's last functioning command center, her crystalline skin reflecting the dim light of distant explosions. The Nexar Empire's warships hung in high orbit like dark stars, their very presence a reminder of how far the Coalition had fallen. After 3 centuries of dominance in the galaxy, the combined might of 17 advanced civilizations faced extinction at the hands of a single ruthless enemy. Admiral, her second-in-command, Commander Zill, approached with characteristic silence. His insectoid features betrayed no emotion, but the slight tremor in his antenna spoke volumes. The last reports from the Centauri sector are troubling. Vexterra didn't need to read them. The Nexar's systematic destruction of Coalition forces had followed the same pattern for the past 3 years. First came their quantum disruption fields, rendering most advanced weapons useless. Then their biomechanical ground forces would descend, consuming everything in their path to fuel their war machine. "How many systems remain?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. 3. Admiral, just 3. The Coalition, once spanning thousands of worlds, reduced to 3 systems. The greatest technological achievements of 17 species had proven worthless against the Nexar's adaptive warfare. Their enemies seemed to possess an almost primitive brutality, yet wielded it with terrifying precision. A sudden alert interrupted their grim contemplation, a new signal originating from the edge of their sensor range. Zill's antenna straightened in alarm. "Unknown configuration," he reported, "but the energy signatures, they're unlike anything in our database." The ships that emerged from hyperspace were ugly by Coalition standards. No sleek lines or crystalline architecture, just brutal, functional designs bristling with what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons and armor plating. Dozens of them, then hundreds, emerging in a formation that seemed almost chaotic. "We're receiving a transmission," Zill announced. "Audio only." A voice crackled through the command center speakers, speaking in roughly translated Coalition standard. "This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress signal. Sorry we're late to the party." Vexterra exchanged glances with Zill. Humans, the primitive species that had achieved faster-than-light travel barely 50 years ago. The Coalition had dismissed them as too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable to join their ranks. Now they were here, responding to a desperate plea sent to every corner of the galaxy. "This is Admiral Vexterra of the Coalition Defense Force. Your assistance is appreciated, but I must warn you. The Nexar." "We've studied the reports," Admiral Chen interrupted. "Your enemy adapts to energy weapons, uses quantum fields to disrupt advanced technology, and employs biological warfare. We've brought something different." As if on cue, the human ships began launching smaller craft. Unlike the elegant shuttles of the Coalition, these were armored boxes that screamed toward the Nexar fleet on pillars of chemical fire. Primitive, brutal, effective. "You should know," Chen continued. "Humanity has spent most of its history fighting itself. We've gotten very good at killing things that are harder to kill than us. Your Nexar haven't faced anything like us." The first wave of human fighters reached the Nexar fleet. Instead of the energy weapons the Nexar were prepared to adapt to, they launched solid projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. The Nexar's quantum fields, designed to disrupt energy weapons, did nothing to stop chunks of tungsten moving at appreciable fractions of light speed. "Impossible," Zill whispered as the first Nexar dreadnought split apart, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. "Their technology is so primitive." "No," Vexterra corrected, watching as more human ships engaged the enemy. "Not primitive. Different. They never developed along the paths we did. They never relied on the technologies the Nexar learned to counter." More human vessels emerged from hyperspace. Larger ships now, carrying what their transmissions identified as ground forces. The Coalition had long since abandoned physical combat, relying on drones and energy weapons. But these humans, They still fought in person, still believed in the value of boots on the ground. Admiral Chen, Vexterra transmitted, "We have millions of refugees on the surface. The Nexer ground forces are about to meet the United Earth Marine Corps." Chen finished. "Trust me, Admiral. Your people have been fighting a war of technology. We're about to show you what happens when you fight a war of will." The first human dropships were already entering the atmosphere, carrying soldiers trained in arts of war that the Coalition had forgotten centuries ago. As Vexterra watched them descend, she realized that perhaps the Coalition's greatest mistake had been assuming that advancement only moved in one direction. These humans, with their primitive weapons and their warrior culture, might just be exactly what they needed. The war for survival was about to change. And for the first time in 3 years, Admiral Vexterra felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. Steel and shadow. The Nexer never saw Sergeant Sarah Chen's team coming. In the ruins of what had once been a Coalition megacity, her squad moved like ghosts through the debris, their adaptive camouflage shifting to match the surrounding devastation. The biomechanical horrors that had terrorized the galaxy's most advanced civilizations were about to learn why humans had perfected the art of asymmetrical warfare. "Target cluster, 200 meters," Sarah whispered into her tactical comm. "Guardian units protecting a resource processor," just like Intel said. Through her enhanced optics, she watched the Nexer units harvest the city's remains. Their towering forms, a nightmarish fusion of organic and mechanical components, efficiently stripped everything useful from the ruins. The Coalition had tried fighting them with energy weapons and drones. They had never considered something as basic as a well-placed explosive charge. "Charges set," came Martinez's voice, barely audible. "Dead zones configured. They won't be able to signal for help." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The Coalition had been shocked when humans insisted on using physical explosives and projectile weapons. "Too primitive," they'd said. But primitive meant reliable. Primitive meant the enemy's quantum disruption fields were useless. "All teams, execute on my mark." The first explosion wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to confuse, to draw the Nexer's attention. As the Guardian units turned toward the blast, Sarah's team struck from multiple angles. Hypervelocity rounds, designed specifically to penetrate the Nexer's adaptive armor, tore through their primary sensor clusters. "They're adapting," Rodriguez called out. "Shifting armor density." "Just like the simulations," Sarah responded calmly. "Switch to secondaries." The next wave of attacks came from different angles, using different ammunition types. This was what the Coalition had never understood about human warfare. Adaptation went both ways. While the Nexer shifted their defenses to counter the first attack, they exposed themselves to the second. Guardian units began to fall, their biomechanical forms crumpling under the relentless assault. The resource processor, their primary target, started to retract its harvesting apparatus. Sarah keyed her command frequency. "Stalker team, you're up." From the shadows of nearby buildings, larger figures emerged. The Coalition had gasped when they first saw the human combat frames, mechanical suits that seemed primitive compared to their own technology. But these suits weren't built with elegant force fields or quantum harmonics. They were built with steel, hydraulics, and human ingenuity. The combat frames engaged at close range, something the Nexer had never experienced. Their adaptive defense systems, designed to counter energy weapons and high-tech attacks, struggled against the brutal simplicity of mechanical strength. Armored fists crushed sensor arrays. Hydraulic-powered limbs tore through supposedly impenetrable barriers. "Command, this is Ghostmaker Actual," Sarah transmitted as her team maintained their firing positions. "Target sites secured. Ready for Phase 2. Admiral Chen's voice came through clearly. "Well done, Sergeant. Coalition engineers are inbound. Keep the site secure." Within minutes, Coalition shuttles appeared overhead. From them emerged beings that had once considered themselves the height of civilization, now eager to learn from the humans they had dismissed as primitives. Sarah watched as they began studying the destroyed Nexer units, their expressions a mixture of awe and disbelief. "I don't understand." One of them, a crystalline being, approached Sarah. "Our most advanced weapons couldn't penetrate their defenses. How did you?" "Simple," Sarah replied, checking her weapon. "You tried to beat their technology. We just tried to beat them." The crystalline engineer stared at the wreckage. "But their adaptive capabilities can't adapt to what they can't predict," Sarah explained. "You attack them the same way every time. They learn to counter it. We hit them differently every time. Can't build a defense against chaos." More coalition scientists arrived, eagerly examining the human weapons and equipment. Sarah noticed how they paid particular attention to the combat frames, probably shocked by their primitive but effective design. The coalition had spent centuries advancing beyond physical combat, only to find themselves learning it again from humanity. A sudden alert from her motion trackers interrupted her thoughts. Multiple contacts, approaching fast. All units, combat positions. The second wave of Nexer forces arrived with their characteristic suddenness, but this time they faced an enemy that had been waiting for them. As the biomechanical horrors charged forward, Sarah's team demonstrated once again why humanity's warfighting experience had earned them a place among the stars. "Remember," she broadcast to all channels, human and coalition alike, "they expect you to fight like you're from an advanced civilization. Fight like you're from Earth instead." The battle that followed would be studied in coalition academies for generations to come. It marked the moment when the galaxy's most sophisticated species learned that sometimes the old ways, the simple ways, were still the best. And as Sarah Chen led her team through another successful engagement, she couldn't help but think that perhaps humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization would be teaching them how to embrace their primitive sides once again. The war was far from over, but with each victory, each demonstration of human tactical innovation, the impossible seemed a little more possible. The Nexer had never faced an enemy that fought like humans, or refused to give up like humans. They were about to learn why Earth's long history of warfare had prepared humanity for exactly this kind of fight. The price of victory. High Commander Raxus of the Coalition Defense Council watched the holographic display with a mixture of fascination and horror. The human training facility, established in what remained of the Centauri Sector's military academy, had transformed the once pristine grounds into something that would have been unthinkable just months ago, a battlefield. "We call it Hell Week," General Maya Santos explained, her weathered face reflecting the hologram's blue glow. "Essential training for coalition forces if they want to fight alongside human units." Below them, coalition soldiers from a dozen species crawled through mud under razor wire, while human instructors fired live ammunition over their heads. The sounds of explosions and shouted commands echoed across the facility. "This seems excessive," Raxus observed, his crystalline form vibrating with concern. Santos' laugh was hollow. "With respect, Commander, that's why you were losing. The Nexer don't fight clean. Neither can we." Another explosion rocked the facility. A group of Arthanian warriors, their chitinous armor caked with mud, emerged from a smoke-filled trench. They moved differently now, more like humans. Low, fast, aggressive. "Your species," Raxus began carefully, "you've been doing this to yourselves." "For how long?" "Since before we left our caves," Santos replied. "Every generation, every war, we got better at it. While your people were advancing beyond the need for physical combat, we were perfecting it." The display shifted to show combat footage from the front lines. Human-led mixed units engaged Nexer forces with devastating effectiveness. The Coalition's advanced technology, combined with human tactical doctrine, was creating something entirely new. "Watch this engagement." Santos highlighted a particular battle. Coalition energy weapons for suppression. Human kinetic weapons for killing blows. Your shields protecting our advance, our combat frames breaking their lines. Perfect synthesis. But Raxus noticed something else in the footage. The way the human soldiers moved, the efficiency with which they dealt death, it spoke of experience that went beyond training. "How did your species survive this?" he asked quietly. "This level of warfare, this violence?" Santos' expression darkened. "We almost didn't. Multiple times. But each war taught us something. World War I taught us the horror of industrial warfare. World War II showed us the depths of hatred and the heights of sacrifice. The resource wars proved that humanity could unite against a common enemy after we nearly destroyed ourselves." A new group of coalition trainees entered the facility's killhouse, a structure designed to teach close-quarters combat. The humans had introduced something they called room-clearing drills, a concept that had horrified coalition military theorists, but proved devastatingly effective against Nexer ground forces. "The Nexer thought they could break the galaxy's will to fight," Santos continued. "They never understood that will isn't about technology or tactics. It's about what you're willing to do to survive." The hologram shifted again, showing the aftermath of a recent victory. Human and coalition forces standing together amid the wreckage of Nexer war machines. But it was the expressions on the coalition soldiers' faces that caught Raxus' attention. They had changed, become harder, more determined. "We're teaching them to kill," he said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "We're teaching them to survive," Santos corrected. "There's a difference. Everything we've learned, every brutal lesson our species paid for in blood, we're sharing it all, because the alternative is extinction." A communication alert interrupted them. New intelligence from the front lines. The Nexer were adapting again, but differently this time. They were attempting to copy human tactics. Finally, Santos smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "They're learning fear." The reports detailed how Nexer forces had begun operating in smaller units, using cover, employing tactics that seemed almost human. But Santos wasn't concerned. If anything, she seemed pleased. "Don't you see?" she explained to Raxus. "They're fighting like us because what they were doing isn't working, but they're missing the most important part, which is, humanity didn't become good at war because we enjoyed it. We became good at it because we had no choice. We fought for survival, for freedom, for each other. The Nexer, they fight because they think they're superior. That's not the same thing." The facility's training continued below them. Coalition forces learning the arts of war that humanity had spent millennia perfecting. Raxus watched as species that had once considered themselves above physical combat now embraced it with devastating effectiveness. "There will be a price for this knowledge," he said finally. Santos nodded. "There always is, but ask yourself this, Commander. Would you rather pay the price of learning to fight, or the price of extinction?" As if to emphasize her point, another series of explosions lit up the training ground. Coalition soldiers emerged from the chaos, moving with the deadly grace that humans had spent thousands of years developing. They were changing, evolving, becoming something new, a fusion of advanced civilization and primitive warrior spirit. The question that haunted Raxus, as he watched his people transform under humanity's tutelage, was whether the galaxy would ever be the same once the war was over. But as reports of victories against the Nexer continued to flow in, he realized that perhaps change was the price of survival. And humanity, for better or worse, was teaching the galaxy how to survive. Echoes of Earth. The Nexer command ship never saw the asteroid coming. By the time their sensors detected the massive rock hurtling through space, it was too late to realize it wasn't just a random piece of debris. It was a human mining vessel, covered in stealth plating, and packed with enough explosives to crack a small moon. Captain James Chen, grandson of the admiral who had first brought humanity into this war, watched from the bridge of his stealth cruiser as the explosion tore through the enemy fleet. The coalition officers on his bridge stood in stunned silence. "Congratulations," he said to no one in particular. "You've just witnessed humanity's oldest military tactic, the Trojan horse." His XO, a towering Arthanian named Kill, clicked his mandibles in appreciation. Deception through simplicity. We would never have conceived of using an actual rock as a weapon. That's because you think like an advanced civilization, James replied, watching as coalition ships emerged from FTL to engage the scattered Nexar fleet. We think like survivors. The battle that followed demonstrated just how far the coalition had come under human tutelage. Their ships no longer moved in elegant formations, instead adopting the chaos theory tactics that Earth's navies had perfected. Energy weapons combined with kinetic strikes in a deadly dance that the Nexar couldn't adapt to fast enough. All units, execute pattern Sierra, James commanded. Show them what we learned on Earth. The coalition fleet broke apart, each ship seeming to move randomly, but there was nothing random about it. The pattern was based on something humans had studied for centuries: the movement of predator and prey species in Earth's oceans. Sharks hunting seals, translated into three-dimensional space warfare. Multiple Nexar capitals attempting to regroup, Catil reported. They're adopting the defensive sphere. James smiled. Just like the old wagon trains, surface vessels did the same thing against submarine wolf packs. Hit them with Sequence 12. The human-designed battle sequence had been inspired by World War I submarine tactics. Coalition ships darted in and out of the Nexar formation, striking from multiple angles, never staying still long enough to become targets. The once mighty Nexar sphere began to break apart. "Sir," his communications officer, a luminescent Valerian, called out. Ground forces are reporting similar successes across 3 sectors. The Nexar are losing their coordination. On the tactical display, James could see it happening. The Nexar, faced with an enemy they couldn't predict, were falling back on increasingly desperate strategies. Their attempts to copy human tactics were failing because they didn't understand the principles behind them. "They don't get it," he mused, watching another enemy capital ship break apart under combined human coalition fire. These tactics weren't developed in think tanks or simulations. They were written in blood, refined through centuries of actual combat. The battle continued to unfold according to human doctrine. Coalition ships, now equipped with both their advanced technology and human tactical systems, were systematically dismantling the Nexar fleet. It was beautiful in its own terrible way. "Captain," Catil's voice carried a note of concern, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the remaining Nexar vessels. They appear to be sacrificing themselves to power some sort of weapon." James's eyes narrowed. "All units, scatter. They're going to." The space between the ships suddenly lit up with a web of quantum energy, a desperate attempt by the Nexar to trap their opponents. But James had studied Earth's history too well to be caught so easily. Execute emergency pattern Delta, just like the Battle of Midway. His fleet responded instantly, breaking into smaller units, using the debris field from their earlier victory as cover. The Nexar's trap, designed to catch a conventional fleet, instead caught nothing but wreckage and empty space. One final lesson from Earth, James transmitted to all ships. Never assume your enemy won't sacrifice everything to win, but always be ready to sacrifice more. The battle's conclusion was swift and decisive. The remaining Nexar ships, their trap failed, found themselves caught between the very forces they had tried to ensnare. The coalition fleet, moving with human-inspired unpredictability, closed in from all sides. As the last enemy vessel exploded, James turned to his mixed human-alien crew. "This sector is clear. 3 more to go." "The Nexar are losing their grip on occupied territories," Catil reported. "Our guerrilla tactics are working. They can't maintain control when every shadow might hide a resistance cell. Every civilian structure might be a weapon in disguise." James nodded. The coalition had learned well. They had taken humanity's history of resistance movements, of asymmetrical warfare, and applied it on a galactic scale. The Nexar, used to fighting conventional wars against conventional opponents, had no answer for it. "Send word to command," he ordered. "Operation Thunderbolt is ready for the next phase." As his crew relayed the message, James studied the tactical display. Across the galaxy, the pattern was the same. The Nexar Empire, which had seemed unstoppable just months ago, was being systematically dismantled by tactics developed on a single planet in an obscure arm of the galaxy. But victory would come at a price. The Coalition was changing, becoming more like humanity in ways that would reshape galactic civilization forever. The elegant, peaceful society they had built was learning the art of warfare, and such knowledge could never be unlearned. As his ship prepared to jump to the next battle, James wondered if the galaxy would thank humanity for this gift, or curse them for it. But as reports of liberated worlds continued to pour in, he realized it didn't matter. Survival first. Philosophy could wait. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, everyone knew how it would end. Humanity had taught the stars how to fight, and the stars had learned their lesson well. Victory's shadow. The Nexar homeworld hung in space like a twisted monument to biological and mechanical fusion. Once natural continents had been transformed into sprawling machine cities, oceans replaced with seas of liquid metal. This was where it would end, one way or another. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen, daughter of humanity's first space admiral, stood on the bridge of the ESS Thermopylae, watching as the combined human coalition armada moved into position. The largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, prepare for one final battle. Status report, she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of 3 generations of warfare. Coalition forces report ready, her tactical officer responded. All ships have adopted human combat protocols. Ground forces are prepped for planetary assault. Sarah studied the tactical display, noting how the coalition ships now moved with human precision. Gone were their elegant formations and predictable patterns. They had learned to fight like Earth's children, for better or worse. Send the message, she ordered. Give them one chance. The transmission was brief. Unconditional surrender, or face complete annihilation. The response came almost immediately. A massive surge of Nexar vessels rising from the planet's surface like an angry swarm. So be it, Sarah muttered. All units, execute Operation Ragnarok. The battle that followed would be remembered for millennia. Human ingenuity combined with coalition technology created something entirely new, a perfect fusion of advanced civilization and primitive warfare. Kinetic strikes mixed with quantum weapons. Combat frames dropped from orbit alongside energy-shielded troops. They're responding exactly as predicted, her strategic AI reported. The Nexar are attempting to adapt to our previous tactics. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. Then it's time for humanity's final lesson. All units switch to ultimate contingency protocols. Across the battlefield, every human and coalition ship suddenly changed its approach. Instead of the calculated chaos they had used before, they shifted to something the Nexar had never seen. Tactics based on Earth's most desperate battles, when victory mattered more than survival. By the stars, her coalition's second-in-command whispered, watching as human ships deliberately took hits to create openings for others. This is what you meant by victory at any cost. The Nexar, for all their adaptive capability, couldn't comprehend an enemy willing to sacrifice themselves so readily for victory. Their biological algorithms, designed to preserve and adapt, struggled against opponents who had turned self-sacrifice into an art form. Ground forces reporting successful deployment. Came the update. Operation Underground Railroad is in effect. While the space battle raged above, coalition troops trained in human guerrilla warfare were infiltrating the machine cities below. They moved like ghosts through maintenance tunnels and power conduits, planting devices that were deceptively simple, electromagnetic pulse generators based on designs that dated back to Earth's nuclear age. All units, prepare for Phase 3, Sarah broadcast. Remember the lessons of Earth. Remember Thermopylae. Remember Stalingrad. Remember every last stand battle in human history. Today we add another to that list. The Nexar never saw the real attack coming. While their forces were engaged with the main fleet, human-led strike teams were targeting something far more fundamental, the biological core of their machine empire. Centuries of advancing beyond physical combat had left them vulnerable to the most basic forms of warfare. EMP devices detonating in 3, 2, 1. Across the planet's surface, simple electromagnetic pulses, technology the Coalition had long since abandoned as primitive, tore through the Nexer's neural networks. Their hybrid biological-mechanical systems, so advanced they had nearly conquered the galaxy, proved devastatingly vulnerable to humanity's obsolete weapons. Multiple chain reactions detected, her tactical officer reported. The Nexer Central Intelligence it's collapsing, Admiral. Sarah watched as the mighty empire that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization began to crumble from within. Not from advanced quantum weapons or sophisticated cyber attacks, but from simple, brutal human warfare. "Send in the cleanup crews," she ordered, "and get me a channel to Coalition High Command." Hours later, as the dust settled and victory was confirmed, Sarah stood in her ready room with representatives from both humanity and the Coalition. The mood was complex, triumph mixed with solemnity. "The war is over," High Commander Raxus announced formally. "The Nexer threat has been eliminated. But the galaxy will never be the same," Sarah finished for him. "We taught you how to fight like humans. That knowledge can't be unlearned." "Perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing," another Coalition leader suggested. "Your species showed us that sometimes the old ways, the simple ways, have value. That true civilization isn't about abandoning our primitive sides, but understanding when to embrace them." Sarah moved to her viewport, watching as cleanup crews moved through the debris field, human and alien working together, applying both advanced technology and simple physical labor to clear the wreckage. "What happens now?" someone asked. "Now," Sarah replied, "we do what humanity has always done after a war. We rebuild. We remember, and we make sure we're ready for the next threat." The Coalition representatives shifted uncomfortably at that last part, but they couldn't deny its wisdom. Humanity had taught them that peace wasn't just about advancement and enlightenment. Sometimes it had to be protected with force. As the combined fleet began its long journey home, Sarah thought about the future. The galaxy had changed. The Coalition would never return to its previous state of purely peaceful existence. They had learned humanity's greatest lesson, that sometimes survival requires you to embrace the very things you thought you'd evolved beyond. But they had also learned humanity's greatest strength, the ability to build something better from the ashes of conflict. The war was over, but humanity's influence on galactic civilization was just beginning. And somewhere, in the vast darkness of space, Sarah knew other threats might be waiting. But now, thanks to humanity's harsh lessons, civilization would be ready.